There once was a man whose footsteps echoed through the halls of castles and the dust of battlefields, before they ever touched the sacred stones of pilgrimage. His name was Inigo Lopez de Loyola, a nobleman born in the rugged beauty of the Basque Country, where mountains met the sky and pride ran as deep as rivers. Inigo was not born a saint. He was forged in fire, ambition, and blood. He dreamed of glory, not grace, of fame in battle, not of whispers from the Spirit. He served kings of earth before ever glimpsing the King of heaven. And yet, beneath the armor and the sword, a deeper calling stirred. It would take a shattered leg, a forced stillness, and a confrontation with the emptiness of worldly victories to bring it forth. This is not just the story of a man. It is the saga of a transformation. From soldier to saint, from courtly ambition to divine surrender, from wounded body to blazing soul. It is a journey through inner deserts and spiritual battlegrounds, through visions, vows, and the founding of a brotherhood that would shape the world. Saint Ignatius de Loyola, Saint Ignatius, did not seek comfort. He sought meaning. He dared to look into the depths of the soul and challenge others to do the same. He trained warriors not for war, but for mission. He taught discernment like a general study strategy. And he left behind a legacy of light that continues to burn in the hearts of those who serve for the greater glory of God. So listen now, not to legend, but to life, not to cold history, but to the heat of conviction. For this is the story of a knight who found a throne in the heavens and knelt before it. Chapter 1. The Knight of Loyola. In the stone stronghold of Loyola, young Inigo Lopez de Loyola was raised among honor, ambition, and the distant thunder of war. Born in 1491, the youngest of 13 children, he dreamed not of monasteries or sermons, but of swordplay and glory. His heart burned with the tales of knights, and his eyes were set on the battlefield. Serving under Don Antonio Manrique de Lara, Inigo lived for prestige and combat. But in 1521, at the siege of Pamplona, his dreams were pierced by iron and fire. Struck by a cannonball while defending the city, he was carried home broken and defeated. His body lay shattered, his world stood still. In the long months of recovery, Inigo sought distraction in tales of chivalry, but none were found. Instead, he was given books of saints and the life of Christ. At first, he read them idly. Yet something shifted. The heroism of the saints did not vanish with the closing of a page. It lingered. Their sacrifice, their courage, stirred him deeper than any romance of war. A question rose within. What if true valor meant surrender? What if the greatest quest was not conquest, but conversion? As his body healed, his soul awakened. He saw that his past had trained him not for earthly glory, but for divine purpose. The knight would rise again, not to serve a king of flesh, but the King of heaven. Thus began his true journey. From the ashes of ambition, a pilgrim was born. Chapter 2. The Breaking and the Light. The path Inigo chose after Loyola was not of honor or ease, but of surrender. Clad as a beggar, he walked away from his name, his wealth, and his comforts. He sought Jerusalem, yet before reaching that sacred land, he had to journey through the wilderness of his soul. His first great stop was Montserrat, a monastery perched among legends. There, before the Black Madonna, he kept vigil through the night. In a solemn act of renunciation, he laid down his sword, his pride, his past, his ambitions, offered to heaven's queen. But transformation is not born in a single gesture. At Manresa, a small town near the Cardona River, Inigo faced the full storm within. In a cave, alone and in poverty, he battled doubt, temptation, and spiritual darkness. He fasted, prayed, and examined every stirring of his heart. Questions tormented him. Was he truly called, or simply deceived by pride? Then, light pierced the shadows. One morning by the river, Inigo experienced a moment of deep clarity. It was not a vision of angels, but a revelation of meaning. Creation, suffering, joy, all pointed to God. It was a mystical awakening, but rooted in life. Everything now bore the mark of divine purpose. From this encounter came the seed of the spiritual exercises, a guide not for monks, but for everyday people. It taught discernment, inner freedom, and how to hear God's voice amid life's noise. It was forged not in comfort, but in silence and trial. Yet fire needed form. In his 30s, Inigo began studies like a schoolboy, Latin in Barcelona, then philosophy and theology in Alcala, Salamanca, and Paris. He faced suspicion and imprisonment, but never turned back. In Paris, he found kindred spirits, Francis Xavier, Peter Faber, and others, drawn not just by his words, but by the power of his transformed life. Together, they dreamed not of conquest, but of mission to renew hearts one soul at a time. The night had become a guide, and the foundation was laid for a new brotherhood, the company of Jesus. Chapter 3, Manresa, the fire within. The cave of Manresa never left Inigo. It lived within him. Though he journeyed through cities and schools, the silence of that cavern remained like a hidden flame. There, the soldier had been broken, and the pilgrim had been born. Now that inner fire began to ignite others. Though he had renounced nobility, Inigo remained a strategist. He saw the world as both mystic and commander. The battle for souls, he believed, was urgent, and it would require more than good intentions. It demanded an army of light, trained and disciplined. The spiritual exercises, born of silence and struggle, became his weapon. They were not for reading, they were for living. Through meditation, self-examination, and surrender to God, they invited people to choose between the banners of the world and the standard of Christ. In Paris, the student Inigo became Ignatius the leader. His companions, ambitious Francis Xavier, gentle Peter Faber, and others, were drawn to his fire. One by one, they experienced the exercises. One by one, they were changed. In 1534, on Montmartre Hill, they took vows, poverty, chastity, and obedience to the Pope. It was not yet a formal order, but a seed. The company of Jesus was conceived in simplicity and resolve. They dreamed of Jerusalem, but Rome awaited. There, amid resistance and suspicion, Ignatius shared his vision. A mobile corps of priests, ready to serve anywhere, without cloisters or comforts. Only mission, only Christ. In 1540, Pope Paul III approved. The Society of Jesus was born. From then on, they were no longer just friends. They were brothers on fire. Jesuits went to India, Japan, Africa, and the Americas. They taught in schools, served the poor, and brought the gospel where it had never been heard. And always behind them, guiding with letters and prayer, was Ignatius. No longer the youthful knight. His body was worn by age and trials. Yet his soul remained sharp. He governed with wisdom, believing that God could be found in all things, in study, in service, in every choice made with love. He wrote endlessly, counseled leaders, and shaped hearts. But above all, he formed men who could change the world from within. In Rome, in a small room, Ignatius lived, prayed, and led. The cave had become a house. The flame had become a fire, and it still burned. Chapter 4, Trials in Rome. Rome, eternal, bustling, sacred, was now the home of Ignatius. But for all its glory, it was also a crucible. The birth of the Society of Jesus was met not with applause, but with suspicion, envy, and fierce opposition. Some feared these new priests without monasteries, who wore no special robes and vowed obedience to the Pope above all. Others accused them of ambition, cloaked in holiness. But Ignatius remained firm. He had faced cannonballs and spiritual darkness. He would not be shaken by politics. He established the Jesuit headquarters in a modest house near the Church of Our Lady of the Way. There, he wrote, prayed, and governed. His leadership was not loud, but exacting. He demanded discipline, detachment, and discernment from every Jesuit. Letters poured in from around the world, from India, Brazil, and universities across Europe. Ignatius read them all, answering each with care and fatherly love. He insisted that education be one of their main missions. To form minds was to shape futures. Under his guidance, schools and colleges sprang up from Lisbon to Lima. Jesuit classrooms became known not just for rigor, but for heart, for forming men and women for others. Yet trials abounded. The Inquisition scrutinized him. Enemies slandered him. His health declined, but Ignatius never complained. He embraced suffering as part of the mission. For him, love was not proven in comfort, but in perseverance. He also faced inner struggles. He missed the road, the freedom of the pilgrim life. Now, bound by leadership, he spent his days at a desk, reading, writing, discerning. But he had learned long ago, God is in the cave and also in the chair. Even the Jesuits tested him. Young zeal met old wisdom, and Ignatius often had to correct, guide, and reconcile. He reminded them that the mission was not about glory, but about souls. Not about doing much, but doing God's will. As Rome pulsed with life outside his window, Ignatius remained focused on the quiet revolution within. The Society of Jesus was no longer a dream. It was a living force, but still required shaping, pruning, and grounding in love. In his humble Roman room, surrounded by maps, letters, and the crucifix he so often embraced, Ignatius worked to the end. He was no longer the fiery soldier or the cave-dwelling mystic. He was now the father of a global movement. And still, the fire burned. Chapter 5. The Legacy Ignited. Ignatius Loyola's life was nearing its end, but his mission was just beginning. The Society of Jesus had grown beyond what even he imagined. Thousands of men scattered across continents, carrying the fire of their founder's spirit. Though his body weakened, Ignatius remained a tower of strength. He continued to guide his brothers through letters filled with wisdom, encouragement, and a fierce love for souls. His words crossed oceans and deserts, uniting Jesuits who never met but shared one heart. The Jesuits became pioneers of faith and knowledge. They built schools where minds opened to truth and faith. They walked into lands unknown to share the gospel and serve the poor. They challenged injustice and ignorance with courage and compassion. Ignatius's vision was clear. The world needed warriors of light, not swords, but of spirit. Men and women willing to leave comfort for mission, to choose love over power, service over fame. When he died in 1556, Rome mourned the passing of a man who had shaped an era. But his flame did not die. The Society of Jesus carried on his fire, blazing trails in Asia, Africa, and the Americas, shaping history through education, evangelization, and social justice. His spiritual exercises remain a beacon for seekers worldwide, an invitation to confront the soul's deepest battles and choose the path of true knighthood, surrender to God. Ignatius of Loyola was more than a soldier or a saint. He was a guide for the restless heart, a spark that ignited a worldwide movement still burning bright today. The Knight of Loyola had ridden once more, this time into eternity. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life and legacy of Saint Ignatius of Loyola. We hope his story has inspired you as much as it has inspired countless souls throughout history. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please consider supporting our channel by liking and subscribing. Your support helps us continue sharing stories of faith, courage, and transformation. Until next time, may the fire of Ignatius's spirit light your path.